Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Health Matters. Today, I'm going to talk to you specifically about how we think about our overall health and how we think about the pursuit of health in our journey to feel better. And so, when we look at total health and wellness, I want to start for us to think about something a little bit differently. And that's the overlap between um, different areas of our self. Okay. So I've done a diagram for this. You can see that health is in the middle of all the overlap, and each of these areas have their own uh, balance and imbalance, have their own level of homeostasis. And so we're going to talk about each individual one, how it overlaps, how it can impact each other. And so this is the broad stroke of it. We have the body, the mind, the spirit, the microbiome, otherwise known as the gut. They all overlap in the very center, creating health. Oftentimes, we're compartmentalizing and we're thinking about our health in a very isolated way. Um, when we say health, we're thinking about our physical health, and then we can put mental health over here, but we don't really think about the interplay and the overlap between all of it. We kind of say health, meaning physical, we say mental health, we kind of think about it over here. There's more discussion around the effect um, than ever before. It started with books like The Body Keeps the Score, and has kind of brought more awareness to how we need to think about the imprinting on our spirit, if you will, and how that affects our mind and our body. If you are a follower of natural living and natural health, you may have heard the term mind, body, spirit before. But hopefully, this is going to bring a new idea to how you think about that. All right, so the components here are body, mind, spirit, and the microbiome. Microbiome is unique to us, but it contains a whole universe within us, organisms that have their own intelligence, their own uh, diet, their own purpose, their own social network, if you will, their own ecosystem, and their own genetics. So they're not like this um, extension of our DNA the way that uh, other parts of our body are. They're actually independent. So cool. So we have to think about them both from the way that they are within our body, but functioning independently too. Again, brings a whole new awareness to how we're going to think about and pursue health. All right. So now let's move on. Let's start looking at the layering of this. If we look at the microbiome here at the top, so the microbiome again has its own genetic makeup. It's going to be impacted by our diet, and in turn, it's going to affect the way we um, feel and think about food because of how we're digesting it. When we're doing things within our diet and lifestyle, this is actually called epigenetics, and it's going to impact the way our genes behave. It will impact how our gut behaves. It will continue to impact how our body behaves. So it is not at the heart. Genetics are not at the heart of all of our health, but it is a significant impact to how our gut behaves and how we are made. All right. If we look at the body, this is impacted by diet, lifestyle, and the conscious mind, how we think about food, our relationship with food, how we think about things like exercise, our choices, our behavior, right? So our choices are affecting our body. That's the conscious mind. And what we eat is affecting the way our brain behaves. And so there is an overlap between how the diet within the body affects the conscious mind, and the choices we're making affect our diet. So kind of gets kind of cool, I think, as all the layers start to overlap. So the mind is divided basically into two parts, the conscious and the subconscious. I think about our subconscious mind more about like our soul, our spirit. That's where that inner dialogue is happening. And so I put it over here with the spirit, and again, the overlap. And the genetics being that that's how we're made, that's how God made us, and the microbiome having its own genetics. I thought it would be kind of cool to put it there in that overlap. Again, the main point of this is to start thinking about our health in more of a complex pathway, a complex vision idea, so that when you're interested in pursuing health, the way that you start to think about and navigate this, um, just expand your mind into thinking about this differently. So let's go the next level deeper here. All right. When we start to look at, again, working on the body. So when we think about health, we're thinking about physical health. We think, oh, it's all about, diet and exercise. Maybe there might be some supplements here. But again, I want you to see the level of complexity that can start to happen and where we might get stuck into thinking that if I do one thing, it's going to impact all of this. Okay. So, out of the body, we're going to feel symptoms like pain, um, things like joints are aching, or our energy level. That's going to overlap into the conscious mind if we're feeling brain fog, if we're remembering, if our attention is good. So there's some overlap there, right? Symptoms also can arise out of the gut, and we do think about them as our symptoms, but they're kind of specific to the way the microbiome is behaving. So that can be things like heartburn, constipation, um, bloating, gas, those kinds of things. So, a system within a system, it is how the whole body is going to be affected because we take our nutrients in our gut and we move them through our body into our bloodstream and we move them into the mitochondrial and convert them into energy. So it's pretty important to understand that exchange between what's going on in our body and then what's going on in our gut and how those are working together. So again, you can have symptoms come out of the gut, you can have symptoms come out of the body. Some of those symptoms are going to come out of the mind. And how we start to address those can be food. All right. We can take nutritional supplements. Nutritional supplements can affect the body, they can affect our digestion of food, and they can also impact the way the microbiome is behaving. So, pretty powerful, um, but not going to bring the whole of who we are into health if there are other things going on in some of these other areas. So, pretty important though that we start to talk about nutritional supplements, powerful, impactful, but can it replace what breathing and exercise can do? Can it replace what needing to have sleep can do? Really, right? We have to breathe. The better we breathe, the more benefits we get. Breathing is involved in helping our mind make more neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. Exercise will help us make endorphins and dopamine. So there's overlap into the conscious mind. And some of those things we can do are going to have a tremendous impact. Now, taking a supplement to improve a neurotransmitter, absolutely, right? This is about finding the relationship between all of that. But if someone is going to just, do eat food and drink that's really harmful and do enough of it, they can undo the benefits of their supplements. They can undo the benefits of their exercise. If someone isn't going to sleep and they're constantly facing issues with their sleep, to the degree that that happens can impact again the body and work against some of these strategies that pretty much have to come together. All right, so let's look at what this looks like, focusing on this other side here, okay? So, in the mind between the conscious and subconscious, I want to shift a little bit and talk about what is happening in the subconscious or as a result of. So, when there is trauma, whether that is something happening in your childhood or something in someone can go through an illness and that can put the body in trauma. So trauma is a very interesting word and kind of a broad stroke to anything that can impact the subconscious mind. Okay, and so uh, talking with someone who has very good training in this area might be really beneficial. Um, the reason why I'm talking about it is because a lot of people come to me for health and they want to work on the body, but sometimes there is a plateau that someone hits, or they can't push through the plateau, or they're getting strange symptoms that have nothing to do with what is going on here in the body, right? This whole area over here. And it's overlapped, but it's not going to be something that we can just talk about in a vacuum. All right, so going back to here, again, this is something you might want to think about working with someone that has high levels of training and degrees and certification in subconscious or trauma or repressed emotions. But the reason I'm bringing it to your awareness as a health educator, because it's so important in the pursuit of health to understand this piece of who we are so that you can start looking at, do I have the right team? Or, when I focus in this area and I hit a certain level, do I need to now go here or add it? And so it's about kind of having enough awareness to start asking the right questions and start looking for the right information. I always find that we almost need to know what the right question is to get the right information. So how do you know any of this if you don't start to think about your health and who you are completely differently? All right, so let's kind of talk a little bit about this. When there's trauma, it can affect the subconscious mind. Trauma can also affect the immune system. It can also affect the way the microbiome behaves. So it's going to impact all areas here, right? Microbiome, body, mind, and spirit. Because again, the subconscious is that inner dialogue within those parts of ourselves that often are separate from the conscious mind. The subconscious can create repressed emotions in its attempt to navigate the trauma. In doing that, sometimes there can be symptoms that are completely associated with this, and it can affect the way the atomic nervous system behaves, impacting the negotiation between the conscious and the subconscious. And if that happens, it's going to affect the body. So we can say that symptoms are coming out of the subconscious, and those are going to affect symptoms coming out of the body and out of the microbiome. If we start to look at this together, right, now we start to see all the different pathways that are composed of the pursuit of health. And again, you may focus on one area at a time. Um, Strategy is something that I really think is important. I'm a big believer in that. You cannot take this all on at once, and putting together a strategy where it makes sense, where you're going, okay, well, this is where I have to focus, and then I layer into here and I have to do this. Um, but also managing proper expectations about if you want to be in true health, you can't just focus on the body and expect to be balanced, to expect to live in that place where you feel robustly healthy everywhere. And so, thinking that also one area is a solution Now, it doesn't mean, again, you can't organize it in a way that makes sense because if we change our diet and we don't change the gut health, sometimes that's not going to be an effective partnership for those symptoms to go away. Sometimes, if our microbiome isn't digesting properly, those dietary changes aren't impactful enough. Okay. Or if we're eating things, but we're not sleeping well and we're not breathing well, even sometimes something like water, the intake of water isn't enough to help someone's physical health. So we can take apart these things individually. And again, the goal of this isn't actually to overwhelm you into the complexity. It's actually to start layering this and help you think that, okay, if I'm pursuing health, where do I focus? And if I'm focusing here, are my expectations appropriate enough so that the results I'm getting are just a building block to getting to this place of true health? All right. Because again, this is pretty complicated and this involves a lot of moving parts. And it's not something that someone can just go, okay, here's my plan, this, and that. It, to me, again, my opinion is that strategizing and layering is super helpful. Figuring out what piece I'm being called to personally in the pursuit of health. Do I need to work on areas in my mind? And does that mean I'm looking at the conscious and the subconscious? And then where do I start to go? This is my plan. I'm going to work within my body to affect my conscious mind. I'm going to work within my gut to affect my body. Am I going to work with someone around the subconscious? Am I going to work on my trauma? So, some of this is a little bit about where do I feel comfortable starting, right? And if you come to us and we're focusing on this over here, right? Microbiome and body, and we're going to affect the conscious mind, and we're going to create an epigenetic environment that helps your genetics. We're going to get into a little bit of that overlap. And so you may hear me start to have conversations like this, where I say, hey, could be time to look at this. And to what level are you going to look at it? And where are you going to start first? You know, what professional is it time to look at? Um, I think it is super helpful to pick one area, whether you feel compelled to work in the spirit, mind, subconscious, conscious, or whether or not you want to start working in the body and the gut. But I just would encourage you to just start to think in a way that expands your mind around what the pursuit of health might involve, how to do it in phases or stages, also how to love yourself in the process and show yourself some grace because it is complex. When we get into this, it's complex, it's navigating a lot of moving parts. And so breaking it apart in a way where you're moving through this with the awareness that this big picture of mind, body, spirit, gut health is how you can come to this unique, beautiful place of experiencing health and wellness. And so, if you understand this broad stroke, and then you go into a little bit of that second layer of what are the pieces within the broad stroke, then you can pick which side am I really diving in and do I have this in a place where I feel a level of maintenance, whether it be this side first or this side, so that you can then move into the next piece, so that at some point you are actively engaged in the work around yourself that feels good and comfortable. This isn't so many moving parts that it's putting you in stress, but it's made sense in a way that you are coming to a place of balance. And look, we're going to move in and out of these places too, in terms of like when we're sick, our body is going to need more attention. It's going to be more out of balance. When we're going through really high stressful periods in our life where it might feel somewhat traumatic, when the mind is overwhelmed. With mental and emotional stress, and when our gut might be imbalanced. So, the way that we move through life is going to tilt the scales in where we will focus, but understanding how it all overlaps together is that constant journey and the constant moving parts in the pursuit of health. It's not a fixed place we land. It has a constant evolving place where all these pieces fit together. And again, if we're really out of balance and we want to start working, we can look at different areas. But again, as we move through and different areas but take more attention because that's more out of balance, then that's how we can shift our focus. I love changing the conversation around health. I love taking the way we think about things and kind of moving it in a new direction. So I hope I've done that for you today, where you can think differently about all the nuances and complexities of the pursuit of health and being in health, and the broad stroke of just thinking about health in general. I hope you'll join me again for another episode. Thank you.